Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Good morning. Today it's the day after, as we say at Interbrand, because yesterday we did release the top 100 best global brands. And a large part of what we're going to be talking about today is all around brands, not surprisingly. But I want to take a moment just at the beginning just to tell you how we actually go about valuing brands. And then we're going to spend some time talking to some people who actually have to do this every day. Run great brands with the complexity of global markets and technology thrown in just for good measure. So how do we go about putting a value on a brand? Fundamentally, it starts by looking at the finances of a business. What we're trying to do is determine the proportion, I suppose, of the economic success of a company, which is to do with its brand. So the first thing that we look at is an earnings stream. Where do you earn money? All the different products and services that you do, the different segments of markets that you're involved in, trying to work out where it's all coming from. And then it becomes a challenge of determining the proportion to which the brand actually influences that. So the first thing that we do is look at something that we call role of brand. Quite simply, we're trying to determine how important the brand was in your purchase decision process. Did it make a difference? If it doesn't make a difference, there's little point in having one. If it does make a difference, how much, and more to the point, can you make it more important? So that's the first thing that we do. The second thing that we then do is look to determine how far into the future that might actually continue to be the case. So we look at something called brand strength. And put simply, it's a measure of loyalty. It shows how well you compete and how well positioned you are to deliver future earnings. And the 10 different factors that we look at, both inside and outside the organisation. So it's a very rounded view. You bring those three things together and it gives you a number. The number itself is great because it enables us to get headlines in our league tables that we produce. But more importantly, what it does is it reminds businesses of the value of brands. The reason we started doing this 13 years ago was for that reason. To point out to companies that this isn't just fluffy stuff, it's about business. At Interbrand, we talk about brands as living business assets. And we then go a step further and say that great branding is really just business strategy brought to life. Brought to life in a way that's compelling inside and outside the organisation. Because increasingly nowadays, particularly in the highly social, networked world that we all live in, it's as much to do with what's going on inside your company as it is to do with what's going outside your company. So, let's take a look at who did well this year and look at the top 10 brands. Coca-Cola, big surprise, I guess. 13 years sitting at the top of this list. The secret to their success is quite simply, they are the kings of understanding how to create an authentic experience and then consistently reinvent it. Relevance is something that they are extremely good at. It doesn't seem to matter what year it is, what's going on, Coca-Cola always seems to be on the edge of it. And that maintains their position. Apple has grown incredibly. We all know how much Apple influences our lives. And one of the big stories of the top 100 this year was technology. But it's not just because they make great products, it's because actually they're changing the way that we live. Quite significantly. Our purchase behaviours, going back to those things about role of brand, the way that we even view our loyalty to companies and the kinds of things that we consider in that equation, all affected by the kinds of products and services that companies like Apple and Samsung give to us every single day. IBM, kings of business to business, you might say. Up there at number 3. Google and Microsoft switch places. Very interesting, actually. I don't know whether you noticed, but yesterday in the newspapers for the first time, actually, Google's market capitalization overtook Microsoft. We put together our numbers 5 or 6 months ago, so just goes to show that this is a good future predictor. GE, number 6. McDonald's, stalwart, 5 years ago, going through tremendous troubles about what its food offer and its position within the world. Intel, we're going to hear from somebody who used to work at Intel very shortly. Samsung, again, one of the fastest growers on the table. And rounding it out, Toyota in at number 10, back in the top 10 after all the troubles that they had just those few years ago. So who were the fastest risers? Well, I mentioned Apple earlier on. This is the greatest increase in brand value we've ever seen since we've been producing the league table. Some 129%. So why aren't they number one? Simply because there are still question marks about what happens next. And brands are as much about long-term success as they are about short-term gain. Amazon and Samsung both increasing in value by plus 40%. Nissan, we're going to hear from somebody from Nissan very shortly, and Oracle increased by 28%. So let's have a look at those who didn't do quite so well. If we can just move on one. New entrants. I think the one that most people were expecting to see come onto the list this year was, of course, Facebook. And there have been continuing discussions about how Facebook is actually going to turn this incredible mechanism for joining us all together into money. There was a fascinating couple of articles over the last couple of days, the work that they're doing with Data Logics, which suggests that the way that Facebook works is a little bit more like the way that television works in terms of building impressions of brands. I think that the future, certainly as far as digital marketing, is going to be much more about understanding how you create those bigger impressions, shall we say. Pampers, P&G brand, $11.2 billion brand, new in on the table this year. Prada, Ralph Lauren, MasterCard, and Kia, the other side of the Hyundai Kia group, entering the table at number 87 with a $4 billion brand value. So who went down? I guess some of these aren't going to be huge surprises. We all know the woes of BlackBerry, of Nokia, and we also know what's happened to Goldman Sachs this year with various letters sent to newspapers and other things going on around them. Moet Chandon, the only what you might describe as luxury brand, which actually had a bad year. And Yahoo, again, are we about to see finally the resurgence of this great brand? So, the table for us constantly reveals interesting things about what's going on in the world around us, but also the way that we behave as human beings. And one of the big stories this year is about technology. But not just simply because of the products, but as I mentioned earlier on, because of the way that our lives are being changed. In order for us to discuss this, the challenges of building a global brand, the changes in the way that technology affects our lives, and increasingly the importance of branding on the inside of companies, because if you don't get it right on the inside, how can you possibly hope to get it right on the outside? We're very lucky to have with us today two guests, and I'm going to spend just a moment introducing the first of our guests. Anne Lunis is the Chief Marketing Officer of Adobe. She's a New Yorker, she's a working mum, and she's been with Adobe since 2006. She was formerly at Intel and is credited with the first ever interactive advertisement, which was around the Super Bowl. Some of you may remember it was an opportunity to choose which ending should come along. She was inducted into the American Advertising Federation's Hall of Achievement in 2000, and she was honored with a Changing the Game Award by Advertising Women of New York. Ladies and gentlemen, Anne Lunis. So let's take a little bit about a look at what Adobe are up to these days. Great insight into the world of Adobe. We'll hear more from And in just a moment. But let's introduce our second guest. Andy Palmer is Executive Vice President of Nissan Motor Company. Andy's spent his entire career in the car industry, indeed since the age of 16, I'm told. He doesn't look older than 25, so I don't think he's been in there for long. He began his career as a mechanical engineer. He has an incredibly deep understanding of the process of building and manufacturing vehicles. He holds a doctorate in management from Cranfield University in England, and he's been with Nissan since 1991. He was inducted into the Auto Express Hall of Fame in 2012 and was voted #1 in 2012, the top 50 most influential British people in the global automotive industry. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll introduce Andy Palmer. And let's get in the spirit again about what Nissan's up to nowadays.
Wouldn't it be cool if someone took mid-size sedans and broke the mold? If we took our best-selling Altima back to its essence, kept its DNA, that reimagined nearly everything in it. Gave it greater horsepower and a lighter and stronger body. Advanced headlight technologies for greater visibility and zero-gravity seats that reduce fatigue. Yeah, that would be cool. Introducing the completely reimagined Nissan Altima. With best-in-class 38 mpg highway and better acceleration than Camry and Accord. It's our most innovative Altima ever. Nissan, innovation that excites. Now you'll know when to stop. The all-new Nissan Altima with easy fill tire alert. It's our most innovative Altima ever. Nissan, innovation that excites.
What a great way to start. Welcome, Anne. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
I guess we should start talking about cultures that you operate within, actually. Both of you, different types of engineering cultures, but operate within engineering cultures. And your task within that is to try and plough, shall we say, a straight furrow as far as branding is concerned. Anne, how do you deal with that within Adobe?
Well, we're a software company, so the experience of the software actually matters a lot. So I think engineers at Adobe are normally kind of more creative, possibly, than other types of engineers. And so they really value how the software is used. They want to make sure that people understand the value of software. And so I think they care deeply about the brand. They care about the brand values. They want to make sure that the software is living up to the creativity and innovation that the company is all about. We measure the brand a lot, and thank you for putting us on the list, because now we have set a goal for ourselves, and employees really care about it. When we were 78 this year, and we've inched our way up, we did a big thing on our intranet site. I think the brand matters, and experience matters to our engineers.
Andy, is it as easy within a car company? Does the culture adapt easily to brands?
Not so easily. I'm an engineer, so I find myself in a rather strange position of, over the years, having referred to the marketeers as flower arrangers. So now I have to justify the position that actually they're not flower arrangers, and there's a real value there. But we tried to boil it down into things that engineers, that a common language between marketeers and engineers. And we've used metrics like pricing, obviously market share, overall opinion, and being able to correlate them so an engineer can understand, if I do this, this, and this, the overall opinion of the vehicle will raise up, and that will grow brand value. So rather than talking very intellectually about the brand, we've got it down to a very simple matrix that each and every engineer can see how they would contribute to the brand. So, for example, fun to drive, a suspension engineer knows that if his suspension behaves like this is part of his contribution to innovation and excitement for everyone.
So you really do break it down literally to the level of product design, and it sounds like you do that as well. To what degree are you involved upstream? I mean, we'll come to you in a second, Andy, because the time frames involved in developing a car are so long. But do you get involved in the way that the team are thinking about the products and what's going to happen next, Dan?
Absolutely. So product development is an area that increasingly we're getting involved in, and we're even doing things like testing out features on the web. So we'll have a feature that we're particularly excited about. There's something called de-blur, which basically lets you de-blur an image. You take a blurry photograph and it automatically de-blurs it for you. We showed this at a conference, and within minutes it was bootleg videos up on the web, people talking about it. This was basically something we had in our labs that might have taken 2 years to produce, and our CEO said, okay, when's this going to be ready? Because people are obviously excited about it. It had millions of views on YouTube. So we actually use the web now for product development ideas, and we do our regular product testing, user experience testing. But I think now you're able to actually get those insights as well as the insights you can glean from social media and the web.
What's the lead time from idea to market, shall we say, in
It depends.
software?
It's not nearly as long as the automotive industry or the semiconductor industry. When I was at Intel, it would take like 5 years. So I would say it could be anything from months to 18 months.
Wow. And for you, Andy, it's years, isn't it?
A new platform would be 7 years. A new derivative would be 5 years. I mean, our product planning areas, the advanced product planners are thinking about social trends 15 years out, because that's only basically 2 generations of platforms. So, there's long lead times.
So these guys must have incredible crystal balls. Very interesting thought. How do you?
This is going downhill quickly.
It is, isn't it?
Indeed. I'm taking that back to Japan. And I'm sure that we have this on video, and they'll be really pleased with that.
Yeah. How do you encourage them to get the brand into their forward view of the world, shall we say?
From our point of view, I mean, look, we took I think a reasonably bold step about 18 months ago, and so we combined the planning division, which I am responsible for, with marketing and communications, what we call Marcom. So we brought it all together, and the intention was it gave the marketeers the opportunity to be in the conversation 5 and 7 years before the product comes out. Important in terms of making sure that there's a linkage to the brand, and probably just as importantly, basically that the marketeers could start to write the stories 5 years before the launch of the product. Let me give you a couple of examples of the process we go through, the process milestones. One of the very advanced process milestones, which is about 4 years out, we ask the marketeer to show us the TV commercial by which he's going to launch this car, and we ask the PR person to show us the press release that they're going to write when this car is launched. And the reason for doing that is it makes sure that there's a thread between the product that the product planner is creating and the storyline that then connects that to the brand, which is about innovation and excitement for everyone.
So you've got this incredible sort of web weaved together of all of the analytical data that you were talking about earlier on, and a very strong understanding of creativity and what's going to drive the story behind that vehicle and behind Nissan as a whole.
And a certain tension as well, because there are contradictions. The advanced product planners with their crystal balls are maybe seeing a different future to that which is the reality today. You can look at things like shifts from Gen Y to Gen Z, or maybe even more profound, for example, the change of the buyer today in China, that is the advent of the one-child policy. They have very different behaviors. The product planner, his job or her job is to be able to predict what kind of cars those kind of customers are going to want 5 years from now. And that might be a slightly different vision to what the marketeer has looking today. So there's a contradiction there, there's a tension there, but I think it makes better products as a result.
You're trying to weave that together into the future. And creativity literally sits at the very heart of the way that Adobe thinks about itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And this is quite a sort of shift forward for you over the last year or so, isn't it?
Yeah. So creativity is at the core of the company. And what's interesting is creativity is kind of in a crisis. We just did some research in the US, Japan, and the UK, and we asked people their views on creativity, and what we found was only 1 in 4 people felt they were creative. 75% of the people thought that their jobs required productivity and not creativity. And the irony is that there have never been more creators. Everybody makes photographs, everybody makes videos, everybody creates apps and websites, and yet people don't feel particularly creative. So what we believe is that people don't understand the value of creativity. They create something and then they put it out in the world and they don't know, is this thing working? Are people seeing it? Is it having the necessary impact? And so our business now is evolving beyond just creative tools and a creative cloud to a marketing cloud, where we offer people technology that lets them measure the impact of that. How many people are coming to my website? What are they saying? How do I get them to purchase something? I think putting those two things together, creativity and this ability to measure the impact of that creativity, basically making the creativity count, I think that's going to make people feel a lot better and more confident about their creativity.
And I can imagine that would work in both of your businesses because of this need to kind of wrap together the art and the science in order to help the people who are perhaps more engineering driven to really understand the value of building brands.
I mean, for us, we have 2 Japanese words in our language: monozukuri, the science of making thing, and kotozukuri, the art of storytelling. And they need to have equal weight and they need to interweave.
Incredible. I can imagine, again, you both operate within industries where there is a tremendous amount of data produced both within your own businesses and also by the industry around you as well. Everything's measurable on the web, and the car industry is like forensically studied by countless different people. To what degree do you, or how more to the point, do you translate the performance of your brands, your marketing, your communications, or your activities, be it across your culture, your products and services or whatever? How do you help people understand that it's actually working inside the company? Because otherwise, it's difficult to persuade your C-suites to actually sign the check for the next lot, right?
Yeah. Well, that's our business now. We sell this marketing kind of measurement and optimization technology. And I can tell you that it totally changed the way marketing is viewed at my company. Because marketing, as you said, has always been very soft. Is it working? And the ability to actually measure the return on investment and be able to calculate how much you're going to need to spend on a campaign in order to derive a certain amount of revenue. What is the optimal marketing mix to figure out, based on historical trends, I should spend 10% on social, I should spend 20% on TV or display advertising. I mean, that's magic for marketing, something we never had before. And that's what enables me to go to my boss and say, look, it's working, you need to give me more money.
Similar story in Nissan?
We have exactly the same story, except my boss doesn't give me the money.
Probably because you're not using our tools.
I need to use your tool, exactly, thank you.
This isn't supposed to be a sales pitch to each other.
I also need that tool which deblurs the photographs, by the way. No, we have exactly. I mean, to quote my boss, Carlos Cohen, when I took over the role of marketing, he said, can you remove the fluff? I mean, can you put in place proper processes that I can understand and demystify this thing called brand? Why is it important? And we take, to the C-suite, we take very, very simple measures. We take market share, we take transaction price, and they're supposed to both be headed north. We take a measurement of overall opinion. We take a measurement of purchasing intention. And that we then overridingly take a position on Interbrand. Where we expect. It's a kind of once a year, I would say, sanity check that everything is going in the right direction, and we have commitments to where we think we should be on that list.
So it actually becomes quite a powerful tool for you planning your business. Well, it's very good for us to know. To what degree, I mean, you operate within very, very crowded global markets, highly complex, and you've got to create a consistent view. You have hundreds of different products within your suites, like mind-bogglingly so, and you have a huge range of different types of vehicles, and then you've got the complexity of different markets, different social needs. How do you manage that? So it's that whole global, local element, I suppose. How does it work in Adobe, Anne?
Yeah, I think the world is actually getting smaller. I think it used to be a lot more complex. I mean, you get off a plane and every kid is wearing the same outfit, using a smartphone, watching the same television, listening to the same music, has the earbuds in. And I think actually the millennial generation is going to be much less differentiated. And I think that's going to make it a lot easier for us. Our products are used the same way in every country. People are making different things, but the product experience is the same. And the marketing is increasingly becoming the same. In Japan, great example, we always used to make different advertising for Japan because everyone used to say, Japan is different. This year, we are actually running the same campaign globally, and we've tested a Japanese variation versus an American variation, and I'm happy to say that the advertising works across the world now. So I really think the world is getting a lot smaller.
And is the world getting more homogeneous for you as well, Andy, or is it still complicated market by market?
Well, I was always told that America was different. So I know clearly, we obviously many of the products, we have 64 products in our product line, selling in virtually every segment and every country worldwide. I think we covered 92% of the segments worldwide. But you know, in recent years, with particularly the access to internet, you can't give different messages about a brand in different countries because there's no borders anymore. So we haven't constrained the local marketeers in terms of their creative, but what we have constrained is the tone and manner. You know, the red Nissan banner must always appear here, the logo like this. You never say more than 3 messages. The tone and manner of the photography must be like this. So we've constrained the tone and manner, and hopefully if you walk through any of the international airports around the world, you'll see a Nissan advert that conveys the same basic message. It's Nissan innovation that excites, and it's the what if message. You know, what if the fastest man in the world owned a Nissan GTR, Usain Bolt? That kind of consistency is something that I would say we've stepped up considerably in the last 12 months.
And you've obviously got, as you pointed out earlier on, got loads of things going on internally which are driving it there for your people and the experiences too. What do you think is going to happen in the future? We've got a couple of minutes left. What advice would you give? What things are keeping you up at night about building your brand to tomorrow? Andy?
Important things for us, I think you see the emerging markets. Give you some statistics. In the US today, about 800 people in 1,000 own a motor car. In India, it's about 50 in 1,000. Wow. So clearly you're going to get a big emergence of car ownership around the world. The units in operation is going to grow terrifically. So therefore you need to democratize the motor car, if you will, again. For those that, you know, bring people off bikes and motorbikes and bring them into car. That's important. In the same context, when you do that, the planet simply can't afford that level of additional CO2 and pollutants. So you see technology moving us more towards a low-emission car and, of course, zero-emission car. So you see the emergence of the electric car, the emergence of the fuel cell car. These are inevitable trends, either taken from, you know, what the planet can cope with, or social demand for more eco-friendly type of vehicles.
Significant changes. Anne?
Yeah, I think brand transparency is going to be increasing because people want to know about the companies they're buying from. They want to know what ingredients are in my product, what kind of company are you, how do you treat your employees, how do you treat the community. I think corporate social responsibility, how you are toward the planet, those things are beginning to really matter. And I think that, you know, brands have to really step up and have to, you know, be responsive to their customers and tell them more about themselves in order for people to want to buy from them.
Fascinating insights. I certainly could have sat and listened to the two of you for several more hours, but sadly we're out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, say thank you, please, to Anne and Andy.
Thank you.